Right. Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this fantastic Thursday. Let's give just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. We promise not to keep you for too long. It's only going to be a 30-minute session, but we're thrilled to have you all here. So let's get started and say a 1 minute time, okay? We don't want to keep you, but we want to give everybody a chance to make sure they're joining. Just as a note, this webinar will be recorded. So if you have any questions, want to reference something, forward it along, you're more than welcome to. As part of after this webinar, we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of it so you can send it along. And thank you so much once again for joining us here on this Thursday. Okay. Give it about 20 more seconds and then we'll get started. So the format of this call is going to be, I'll do introductions, a round of intros. We'll start with some questions. We've got a number of topics we're super excited to cover that Ash and Otto are going to speak to, and then at the end of this call, we'll make sure that we leave some time for question and answers. If needed, we can either take y'all off mute, or if you want to just type them in on chat, that works as well. So. Okay. All right. Perfect. Well, that's enough time. I think we've got enough folks. As people will trickle in, we'll make sure that we get them covered. So thank you, everybody, once again for joining. The topic of the webinar today is how RCM and data powers RCM decisions inside of growing dental groups. So I'm thrilled to announce that I'm joined here by two fantastic colleagues and friends. First of which is Ash Toub. He is the founder, or I should say co-founder and CEO of Ponce Dental Studio, a growing dental studio in the Atlanta area, which is very nice to see. I think Ash, you've got three locations now growing as well, which is fantastic. He is also the co-founder of, or sorry, the founder of Smile Data, and as well as a marketing company. In addition to that, to make sure that you drive more patients into those practices. So you are a busy man, my friend. Excited to hear a lot of great things about what you're doing. I'm also joined by Otto Kasymov, the founder and CEO of Zentist. He founded Zentist in 2015, has been significantly helping small practices as well as large DSOs optimize their insurance revenue and RCM workflows. And then before that, a very storied background in corporate finance and investment funds. So you've been helping people with money for many, many days, which is fantastic. So without further ado, I know we've only got 30 minutes, so we're going to jump into the topics themselves. And Ash, the first question is going to be to you, my friend. So when creating a practice, buying a practice, building a practice from scratch, what are some of the pillars that you look at? What are the things that make a great dental practice? What are the things that you look for as far as building or starting a dental practice?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think I sent you a little slide that I think I like visual things. I'm a visual learner. I fall asleep sometimes hearing people. So just to give a little background, look, in my past, I've ran, a DSO, a couple hundred locations at some point. We've had the opportunity and the privilege to kind of play as a founder. I've kind of played in every role, and I've seen over the last, let's just say 15 years or so, these pillars have been, not only our own struggles that we've learned from, but a lot of other companies as we went in as consultants to look through. It's always one of these pillars that's broken, right? And with our day to day running our own groups, whether you're running a single practice or whether you're running a 200 location group, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is like, are you building an apartment building or a house? And these pillars to me are really important, and I put them in an order for a very specific reason, right? It's always about people, data, infrastructure, revenue cycle, and marketing. What does that really mean? I love to start with the people part. For us, it's a big deal. A lot of our team members have been with us for a long time. They trust us, but why? Um, my team would tell you that most of them don't even deal with me on a day-to-day sometimes, right? But the foundation that we have built, this is the blood of our body, right? So, if you really think about um, the right analogy of what this is, I cringe every time I would hear someone in our company would be like, everyone is replaceable. I personally think that is the dumbest thing to say about any organization and about anyone because, is that technically true? Yeah, but what cost does that come at, right? I always say it's like switching currencies. What is the exchange rate, right? Because yeah, you could replace someone, but by the time they come and learn all these other pillars in your system and get themselves up to date in that knowledge base, you've lost a lot of money and sometimes they weren't as good and that turnover just feeds, right? And where are those people? They're really inside the practice. That's where it starts to me as the foundation. Then it goes up the levels from a DSO, but really the practice people are really important to us, right? The next thing is really about the data, right? How do you know how fast you're going if you're not looking at the speedometer of your car, right? So just it doesn't mean have expensive analytics, right? It's just you got to know certain basic numbers and read them often. And it's almost having a GPS in the car, right? Could a map get you from point A to point B? Absolutely. Is it going to be as good as a Google GPS to get you from point A to point B? Probably not. But, people have survived off the maps, but just don't drive blind, right? And data is such an important aspect of that. Now, when I talk about infrastructure, um, not many people understand this. This has to do with how your IT is set up, but really it's also like what's the tech stack you chose, right? What is the PMS you went with? Who are these additional service companies that you chose, right? Like why did I choose Zentist over somebody else, right? And that infrastructure it's important not only from like a day-to-day operation, but you also have to remember scalability. And where I've seen people fail here is it's like the best analogies is like they came in and they built framing on a house and then they decided they want to build a 3 apartment story building on that same framing. And sometimes it doesn't last. So that infrastructure piece is really important from that sense. The rest of this is about offense and defense, right? And to me, revenue cycle, uh, it wasn't a passion of mine. Maybe it is for some, right? But it was an essential part of my business that I was forced to learn the hard way, meaning I lost a lot of money until I learned what I had to do to fix the issue. And we're going to talk about fundamentals of that. But so many times I see DSOs focused on growing and acquiring and doing all like they're playing the offense while there's no goalie in the net, right? And you just are losing more and more and more and more money over time as you're focused on growth because you never fix the defensive side on it, right? Now, marketing is another big piece, and I'm going to dive into that, maybe not as much into this call, but listen, you've spent the money. People go spend the money. They built the rocket ship, they built the space station, they do all of this, but then they don't put rocket fuel in it, right? Or they don't put enough for the rocket to get to orbit. And everyone's like, how did you grow a practice from 0 to 5 million in year one? There is no secret sauce. I just put a lot of rocket fuel in there. We're spending 50 or 80 grand a month in marketing for one location. That's how we're able to grow it as quickly as we can. There are some other things involved, but everybody forgets about that pillar. It's probably the last piece we're talking about today for marketing, but I'd love to kind of get into that in detail and maybe another session.
That's awesome, Ash. And I really like how you put revenue cycle before marketing, right? So fix the leaky bucket, make sure that you can defend, and defense there is perfect. Make sure that you can defend the dollars that your practice has already brought in prior to spending a lot of money and getting, more revenue in the door and sort of optimize on that.
Mm-hmm.
So Otto, the next question is for you, my friend. As a lot of these conversations we have are sort of tailored towards very large DSOs, right? When they have 100 practices and beyond, what are some of the things that you've seen smaller practices should focus on? Maybe 1, 2, 3 locations. What's some of the stuff that you think that some of these smaller groups should focus on because they don't necessarily have an entire team that's dedicated to solving these challenges?
I think come to think of it, it's almost you want to say that you know be it the 1 location or 3 location group has the same problems when it comes to insurance and workflow and workload with insurance. So you have to think about like how can I set this up, configure, be it tech stack, be it my solution, be it my billing team. How can I set this up so that I could get the result at the low level and process I have? and not think, you know what, I'm small, probably this is not a problem. I think, I mean, obviously in any dental practice setting, number one is like there's a vision and leadership of how clinical work is done. Past that, I think the ownership has to think about, okay, do I have a full hands-on understanding and robust understanding of how my insurance process works? If not, can I bring in an advisor, a consultant, any sort of a professional help to help me set this up for success? I think that's important. And I think, obviously, it's not about like having an ideal process and setup, but understanding what are this minimum, it's called bare minimum or minimum viable process. And from that perspective is about having, really good verification process in place, having timely and accurate claim filing in place, having timely and also detailed posting process in place, so that you get to service patients and their accounts as orderly, as clean, as accurate, and as timely as possible. And then also have a better understanding of your accounts receivable with insurance companies, with insurance all in all. So I think, there's just so many different problems. Obviously, credentialing is number one, and making sure that you decide on your network strategy. But I think key bits here, as everyday production happens, is that, do I have my verification process in order? Do I have my claim billing process in order? Do I have my posting and AR process in order on a daily basis? And I think, when you're, be it small, be it large group, you are dealing with same insurance companies effectively, and it could be these complications. You might be getting paid on a lease network, or you could be out of network, and but you're kind of adjusting incorrectly, and so on and so forth. So your job is to really understand your insurance and demographics of your patient base, and then recognize what plans you're seeing and how you have them set up. And these details are just, there's just so many things to set up, to configure, that you can do this only by throwing people at the problem. You just need a good combination of, okay, what is the baseline technology and tech stack, as Ash mentioned, that I need, and who's this one person or two people in my group that will be the owners, that will be responsible for this process. So I think it's always a combination of the technology and people. And especially when you set this up, when you design, when you think about like, oh, I'm seeing a new patient with a new plan altogether, or I just got in network with one payer or so on, you have to do a little bit of project management, robust project management. And when you run a small business, you're just so busy, of course, and you just run like set it up on the go, and you don't just take a second and think about like, have I thought about every aspect of this setup of this project? So I think a little bit of project management will just go a long, long way. And sometimes we just try to shoot from the hip. Let's get it done fast. Let's move on. Okay, new payer, doesn't matter. But you're just kind of not investing. You can read the benefits if you set it up correctly the first time around, every payer, every single item, and so on and so forth. So yeah, in a nutshell, be it small, be it large group, you're dealing with the same complexity of insurance. And I mean, obviously there's exceptions. It could be a case where you see just few payers and they're commercial and the rest is fee for service. I don't know. But if you see a healthy a kind of mix of payers coming your way, then you have to think about project management. Then you have to think about a minimum viable technology stack and process, as well as the person, the owner, that will be looking at the performance of this aspect of your business.
Oh, that's perfect, Otto. That's a great point. Don't try and take down the whole mountain if you're a small practice. And there's a lot of people out there who are willing to help, right? There's a lot of technologies and consultants out there, because we're all facing the same problems, be it a small practice or a very large one. And then jumping into the problems here, Ash, this one's going to be for you. So if we don't fix the RCM problems, right? So if we're not in the defense and we're not fixing that, we throw a bunch of money at marketing. Like, what are some of the things that we should be on the lookout for? RCM as a domino effect into how it affects the practice, and what exactly it would change as far as the money's coming in the door.
Yeah, I mean, listen, all of this is like a domino effect, right? Which is really kind of the next, the slide that I gave you. And this hits so much on what Otto just said, right? Um, you know, go to the next slide because this is a fun one that I like to share, right? I always use this analogy of like, I see so many DSOs spending time emptying the sink instead of closing the tap, right? And just emptying the sink once. They throw all these resources, all these people, let's all get a bucket and empty the sink, and everybody's sitting there working while the main problem that's feeding the sink is still not fixed, right? And this is where you can go back, and this is where to really kind of understand where your problem is coming from, right? Because some of the stuff begins before a patient even enters your door, right? It starts with credentialing, right? So if credentialing is broken, every domino after credentialing is going to fall, and the balance by the time it gets number 11 and number 12 is only going to get bigger, okay? And this is what is killing DSOs. I have personally seen this happen in so many of them that shut it down, right? Because why? Sometimes you're buying a practice, sometimes it's a new practice. It doesn't matter. You don't fix credentialing, right? And then nothing else is right in your system. No claim's going to come back paid. The second thing that I see a lot of time is the fees not entered correctly, right? What is that going to do to us? If I can't enter a fee incorrectly, then I can't estimate the right amount that insurance is going to cover. Again, all the dominoes after this are going to hit, right? Um, that a lot of times is like high level. Now, I'm going to tell you most small practices maybe have this fixed, maybe, at least credentialing, maybe, but the fees in the system, they may not. This is where Zentist helped us a lot because these fees change all the time. And as you guys were doing our auto posting and stuff, like this is where we're getting the notifications and understanding and like, hey, something's up. Why is this being overpaid? Why is this being underpaid? And we would realize that there was maybe a fee error in the system, right? To me, number three is the most underrated verifications. Okay. This is where I want to invest the most amount of my money. Okay. Because if you don't get this right, then you can't present the right treatment plan. By the time you quote the patient, when you submit the claim, the follow-up that's going to come from all of that, right? So insurance verification is the pillar that is broken in 90% of people that are having issues. Okay. I'm not saying they're not doing verifications. It's that maybe they're relying on systems that aren't accurate, or most importantly, they're not asking the right questions. They don't understand how downgrades work. They don't understand how, history and, how patients get the check or you get the check, et cetera, right? So that's a big piece, right? Once we get to treatment planning, this is more about, I kind of put this back to verification. A huge piece of that is, let's say I verified everything correctly. How is it entered into the system, right? And is that accurate? And if it's not accurately entered into your PMS, your verification could be correct, but the entered information now we're pulling the quote from is broken, right? So
Yep.
from there, we go into treatment planning. Then we can properly estimate the copay. This is where the right data problem, platform comes in. Like for us, we know exactly, we have a copay percentage fee. Like we know we collected the right amount from the patients, right? Then it moves into the claims. So this is where, to me, this is the big piece about Zentist to us, right? Which is really falls under number 7 and number 8. But number 6, right? How you submit the claim. A lot of this sometimes falls on the practice, right? And how well you submit the claim here is going to determine how much you're going to spend to chase that money on step 7, 8, and so on, right? Because we used to have it where we had so many people following up on claims and only a couple of people sending claims. We switched that, and just by that switch, we basically freed up 3 people's times, right? Because we didn't need as many people following up on claims. So the claim going out the door, point number 6, is one of the most important pieces. Then it's about how you follow up. Now, the one thing is, from step 6 beyond, there is some time on this, right? Like you could go back and fix the problem. But anything before that, you can't go back and fix the problem, right? So a lot of people, when I say emptying the sink, they throw people at step 7 and 8 and 9 and all of these things. They're not throwing enough people to actually fix the foundational problem, which could be anywhere from step 1 until step 5. Okay. So this is the piece where I'm saying that, Don, because after this, what happens? Then did we bill them correctly? Did we post it correctly? And this, again, for us with Zentist, I think you guys are posting like 95% of our checks, right? That we almost don't have a human touch. Like we might be verifying something, but that's taken a lot. Why is that important to me? It's not about, oh, great, I get to cut people. It's like, no, now I have enough people to help me fix the other steps to make sure nothing is broken, right? And then you got step 9, 10, 11, and 12 at that point, which is really about collections and how you want to be collecting from people. Your hope is that there is nothing. If you got everything from step 1 until step 8 correct, you really shouldn't have anything to do from step 9 until step 12. Okay? Minimal. And that's the key there.
Yeah, and it definitely helps with the patient experience as well, because then they're going to know exactly how much of a check that they're going to write you whenever the procedure's done, whenever they come into the office, and then there's not going to be any surprises whenever they get something in the mail. Well, oh, you actually owe us more money.
100%. This goes back to the pillars. By the way, you lose people in your organization because of having these steps wrong, right? Let alone you pissed off patients. Now you have the, and what feeds this to be incorrect a lot of times is the wrong infrastructure, right? So, and I think we'll if we have time, we can get into that piece of it, but that I hope covers enough.
No, yeah, that's absolutely fantastic, and you're 100% right. So I'm gonna pass this one here to Otto, because he's got a ton of experience as far as data that we track, things that we help organizations with. So Otto, this question's for you. What are the 2 things that you'd recommend that practices look at as far as RCM? Like, what are the 2 data points that you'd recommend that they keep track of on a weekly basis to make sure they're trending in the right direction, the practice is growing, and they're fixing these problems?
If there's only kind of selection of 2, there's just revenue cycle being more complex. Probably it warrants more than just 2. There's a few things that has to be measured, but I think number 1 is that there's another extreme here where you could just invest in like lots of technologies and the best people and bring in also an outside help and so on and so forth, and very quickly you realize that you are spending a lot of money. You have a very high cost of trying to collect this revenue. So I think it's important to really, however small or big organization is to, over time, calculate and track your cost to collect, and try to understand the benchmarks out there, and try to, over time, improve one by one, piece by piece, process by process, and step by step, how you can manage and maintain cost to collect. Some organizations, passionately try to go and solve these problems, but sometimes they solve this at the cost of like 5 to 6% of the revenue, and it's just expensive, and it's just the ability and not a sustainable way to build and grow your business and have the right profitability for your further and long-term kind of growth and credibility. So creditworthiness, sorry. So that's why kind of really looking and understanding your cost to collect and optimizing towards a benchmark of 2% is critical. The second bit here is just maybe 1 or 2 bits on the performance of revenue cycle. I think number 1 is collection ratio. And collection ratio, generally, we look at it just holistically across the practice, like what's your total production, what's your collections, and so on. But I think the ingredients, the inputs that go into the insurance part of collection and patient part of collections is so different. I think it's worthwhile to look at the insurance collection ratio and then patient portion collection ratio separately, and then have different benchmarks, because there's just like conventions on how you bill insurance and how you collect that always has significantly lower collection ratio versus patient. And then as you collect from patient, and then when you combine them, and we all chase 95, 99% collection, or sometimes people report, oh, I have 103% collection ratio, is because you've been pushing your patients whenever insurance has made a wrong move or made a wrong adjudication, or the verification and copay calculation was incorrect in the beginning, and you're putting actually a pressure on your patient base, or you are covering for all the issues that are on the insurance side So I think there's just this kind of elements where a collection ratio, and you break it down into these kind of two buckets, could give a really good glimpse. And ultimately, I think one big item is looking at your insurance accounts receivable, your aging accounts receivable. There are benchmarks against that as well. Not tolerating roughly 90 plus at all, and really fine tuning your process over time so that insurance really adjudicates on time, gets to have understand your gets to recognize your providers, and gets to work with you on a timely basis, be it portal access, be it document access, and so on and so forth. So I think yeah, these two things: collection ratios and your aging accounts receivable with insurance companies.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I like those. So cost to collect, basically hovering around that 2 to 5%. And shoot, if you get all of these, basically step 1 to 5 correct, that's going to be pretty minimal. And then the collection ratio, making sure that you're getting the money that's expected from the insurance company, and then the aging buckets, right? So making sure that the claims that have been submitted, how long are they sitting out there? And insurance companies just not responding. So that's perfect. Which is getting us into a bunch of data points. So Ash, this this was a perfect tee up for you, my friend. If we're using data as a diagnostic tool, how can we use this data to make changes inside of an organization? If you have any good advice for practices, we'd love to hear it. So,
Of course. My big thing I always say is data is like the X-ray, right? We're looking for cavities, but we can't diagnose by just looking at X-rays. You sometimes have to be directionally guided. If you don't mind going to the next slide, just for me to kind of talk about the one after this one. So what I really talk about with this is I actually never look at aging, right? I think looking at claims aging reports is kind of a last decade of what people should have done, right? Because when you really think about it is, I don't care if a claim's been sitting there for 30 days. I don't care if it's been sitting there for 90 days. I just care about why hasn't it been paid? And most importantly, has anyone followed up with it when they should have followed up with it? Okay. And I think the thought process of working claims of a 30, 60, 90 is broken because most of the people who have to work claims, um, they're very busy, right? And they don't have the right tools to help them prioritize exactly what claim needs to be touched next. And um, you can't expect any human to look at 1,000 claims and decide which one am I working next. Okay. And what does that do? That ends up creating inefficiencies where we end up touching claims that we maybe shouldn't have touched yet because it was too soon. And that wasted someone's time. And then as a result, there are claims that I have, listen, we're in the data business. I'll bring clients on and I'll look at claims that have literally been out there for 3 years. No one ever touched them. Okay. Not even once. So what do I mean by this, right? So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to kind of show you like how our data ultimately helps, right? And how the process is, right? So like claim goes out, right? The first thing I'm going to give it 30 days. Some insurance companies take less, some take more. But to me, like if I wasn't paid in 30 days, I got to know what happens, right? So we have a system where it says this claim needs to be followed up on, right? No matter how old it is. So once the claim gets touched, then there's usually a reason, right, for that. And by the way, guess what gives me that reason typically is Zentist, right? So we understand what is the reason and we tag a claim with some kind of a custom tag, right? And this is customizable for any client, right? It's in process. Maybe it's an ortho. Maybe it's missing attachments. Maybe it's whatever, right? So based on the code or whatever thing that we attach it to, there is a number of days where the claim goes to sleep, right? It's like hitting a snooze button on the claim, right? So what does that do for us? If you go to the next slide, I'm going to kind of show you how we really kind of handle something like this with data, right? I don't have a crazy revenue cycle dashboard, you guys. This is the only thing I need. Six things, okay? By the way, like some of them I don't even look at. Procedures not billed. These are the procedures that I should have created a claim for, right? This is, by the way, my own practice. There are sometimes hundreds of thousands I've seen that are out there for some practice because they're so old. But every day we make sure that number goes to zero. And then there's the claims that aren't sent. And then there's the claims that kind of go on wait, right? Like these are the claims that need attachments, maybe the crown that needs a crown seat, maybe the secondary that needs to go out, right? After that, it goes to the bottom row. It goes to claims in process. This is where it sits for 30 days. Guys, look, I got 704 claims sitting in there, right? Anywhere from 30 to 90 plus. But do you know why it's in there? Because those are the claims I don't need to touch because I've already touched them. So when a claim moves to the claims for follow-up, which you can see I have 59 of and 32 grand that should be in my bank account technically, the second we follow up with those claims, and we get that to zero at the end of every week, right? The second those claims need to be followed up on, the team follows up on them, tags them appropriately. That claim now goes into claims in process. It could sit in there for 3 days. It could sit in there for 30 days, right? Like, I don't think we have anything that sits longer than 30, right? So that cycle basically now means that the only bucket my team cares about is the 60 claims that's sitting in the claim for follow-up list. And that has exploded our insurance income. And I finally went to sleep one night. When that goes to zero on every Friday, I literally go to sleep knowing that I have no claims that need to be touched. Again, I don't care if they're 90 days plus. I just care, did we follow up when we should have, right? And this is where the data is helping us. And this is where the data allows us to not overcomplicate things. I could run a 200 office DSO out of this dashboard right here, or I could run a one location, if I'm a single doctor out of this to really understand whether my claims are being followed up on or not, right? So data as an x-ray makes things simpler. I know I got 160 claims waiting in queue. We talk about that every week. Why is it waiting in queue? What is it waiting on, right? So that just kind of goes to tell you guys of why and how data can hopefully help most practices understand it. It doesn't have to be complicated.
No, this is perfect, Ash. And this is, I just want to make sure everybody understands, this is what Smile Data focuses on, right? This is one of the
This
reasons
is
why.
one of our like many dashboards, and a lot of it people can customize and build their own with our AI. So there, but this is just, it can be this simple as all it is. So all of our dashboards are very customizable, but this is one of them that we've created for some of our clients.
That's perfect. And I know we're basically running out of time here, so I'm gonna do a closing and then ask you both sort of a final question, and then we can pop over to the chat, see if anybody else has any questions. The last thing is basically making this actionable, and then we can call it a combination question, making it actionable. What to change in our practice, and if you've got any sort of final thoughts on what you're looking forward to in the future of dental RCM, that would be fantastic. So, Otto, I'll pass this one to you. Do you have any, sort of advice on making some actionable changes inside of an organization, or if you just want to switch to what you're excited about in the future of RCM, that would work too.
Yeah, I want to leave maybe with this idea that finding the right technology kind of stack to solve some of these problems is just recognizing that it's not easy. And I think it takes time, especially for smaller groups. It's very difficult. They have to attend to all other parts of the business, but I think it's a must-have. You shouldn't settle until you get to the outcomes and outputs that you need. You should iterate. You should ask your counterparts and partners to improve on particular items that are of your concern and the outcomes that you are kind of goals that you set for the RCM function. So I think this idea that like really piloting and testing things out and setting specific goals that are ambitious enough but achievable from revenue cycle outcome perspective is critical, and not giving up. And sometimes it again takes up more than you think. It's like more than you imagine, and persevering and maybe having outside help to get there is so critical. And I think I would just leave with that you would think that like right off the bat these problems are solved, but many things come with the revenue cycle with exceptions. Like you might have an 80% coverage on verification, but that 20% that really breaks apart and brings all the pain into the practice and into the patient process. Different pain, figurative pain. I think just kind of persevering and measuring with the outcomes that you need, and then changing software fast enough to get to the point where you need to be.
Well, No, that's fantastic. And then Ash, since we just talked about making something actionable, which this is a fantastic dashboard, making sure that the claims are being submitted and followed up with. Do you have any? I'm going to pivot a little bit for you. Do you have any things that you're looking forward to in the future of RCM, be it with Smile Data, your own practice, anything that you think is pretty cool that's coming out?
Listen, I think Zentist auto posting has been really cool for us. I just think that the right product is going, there's a lot of great products coming out. I think AI is going to really support rev cycle in a big way because those automations are very, repeatable and it will allow people to collect better. My only suggestion is, shut off the tap and make sure that your defense is tight before you play offense and make sure that in as Otto said, the infrastructure, find the right tools that blend together and work together, right? Smile data is a big thing for us, but I couldn't do it without the Zentist piece, right? So there are complementary products that work really well together, and it's meant to make your lives easier. But what I'm excited about the most in one word, I want to see how AI is going to help change dentistry for the better and create better patient experiences, which is the ultimate thing that we always look for in our practices.
Well, I want to say thank you both for spending some time with us here, and for all the folks who joined on the webinar. Thank you all for spending this Thursday afternoon with us. Sort of as a next step here, please y'all go check out Smile Data. So Ash is the founder and CEO. He'd be thrilled to answer any questions. Very open person. He uses his product in real life in his practice, which is fantastic. And we are also from the Zentist team thrilled to have him as a partner and a customer of ours for auto posting as well. So we're super excited about that. And thank you everybody once again for joining. As mentioned, this will be recorded. And I hope you all have a fantastic Thursday afternoon. So thanks everyone.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Take care,
Take
Ash.
care. Bye. You too.